Elementary music teacher friend, you love what you do, but you might feel unappreciated and, in fact, unseen some days. You may even feel like you're on a music teacher island and just want to connect with other music teachers who can relate to both your struggles and wins when it comes to teaching elementary music. I get you and understand completely the feelings you're having. That's why each and every week, the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast will provide you with solo and guest episodes that will help you realize you're not alone in your music teaching journey. Throughout each episode, my goal is for you to be able to walk away with actionable steps and ideas to help you feel like you're ready to take on the new week with whatever challenges may be thrown your way. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Peresta, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're at home, in your car, in the shower, or wherever else you're listening, grab your cup of coffee or whatever other beverage is nearby and listen in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be joined today by the amazing Stephanie Leavell. You may already know who she is, and if you don't, then you will after this episode. She is the founder of Music for Kiddos, and I love connecting with her. We have gotten to know each other a little bit online, of course, and I am just so inspired and impressed. She writes songs for kids about pretty much anything that you can imagine. And she is just amazing. So she is a board certified music therapist, a music educator, and like I said, the founder of Music for Kiddos, which is a website dedicated to high quality children's music. She's a songwriter, Berklee College of Music grad, and is passionate about using music to support kids academically, socially, and developmentally. You can find more about her at musicforkiddos.com. And today we are going to talk about how to use music with the littlest of learners from preschool through kindergarten. And I am just, like I said, so thrilled to have her on the podcast and cannot wait for you to listen to this episode. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. I'm so excited to have you back here today, and we are joined today by Stephanie, and she has a site called Music for Kiddos, and I'm so excited to talk to her today. We've connected with each other on Instagram, and I've loved following her. She is just so amazing at sharing songs that she's even written, but for the smaller of kiddos. And I just can't wait to interview her today for you to hear about her story and her joy in working with kids in music. So, Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, my Instagram friend.
I know. Isn't it so funny when you've connected with someone online and then you finally have a face-to-face conversation? You're like, oh my gosh, hi.
Yes, and I do. I feel like I know you. So it's perfect.
I know. Well, is there anything that you would like to tell us about yourself that our listeners would love to know about you? Like, just tell us about your journey in becoming a musician and owning your own business and anything like that people would love to know about you.
Sure. So I'm a board certified music therapist, and then I specialize in working with kids 0 to 6. And, I've been a board certified music therapist for 10 years, and I've done a lot of different things along the way. And I should tell you, something kind of interesting about me is I've always been a songwriter through and through. At first in college, I studied composition, and I've just always had this drive for writing music, but I'm very introverted. I have stage fright, and I could never be a performer. Absolutely never. It just wasn't my thing. So I found music therapy, where all of a sudden the music that you're creating is about somebody else. And I was like, oh man, this is so much easier for me. And so I became a music therapist. I've really specialized in working with kids. As an entrepreneur, I've done all kinds of things. Like I've started hospital programs and, programs at sensory clinics and various places around. And about 5 years ago, my family moved from where we thought we would be forever, Boise, Idaho, to Indiana. And all of a sudden my private practice, was done. This hospital program that I had built for years and years was done, and all of this. And we moved to a pretty small town so my husband could get his PhD. And I found myself teaching preschool music. And I was somebody who I'd worked with kids. I mean, I'm just a kid person through and through. I'd worked with kids a lot one-on-one, and I'm improvisational. So a lot of my work with kids one-on-one is we create songs together, and I kind of follow their lead. Well, put me in front of a class of 20 preschoolers, and it was like the hardest thing I had ever done. Truly, I was terrible at it. I was like, what? I'm a kid person. Like,
Right.
I should be able to handle these 3-year-olds. And
Yeah.
it was so hard. So anyway, at that point, I started looking into, early childhood resources, and I wasn't quite finding there were lots of early childhood resources and songs and things like that, but I wasn't quite finding the exact style that I wanted. And I wasn't exactly finding the quantity that I needed to provide some, really good variety for my classes. And so after looking for a long time for those things, I thought, oh, sheesh, I should just start recording my own songs, because I was creating my own songs. And so that's how I started Music for Kiddos. And I just started emailing songs to other music therapists and other music educators working with preschoolers. I have a Song of the Month Club, it's called. So I professionally record a brand new original children's song once a month, and I send it out for free to my email list. And so I started doing this because, honestly, external accountability, it had me writing regularly and recording regularly. And it just kind of started, people started talking about it because they liked my songs. And so that's how, 3 years ago, I started building Music for Kiddos. And now it's really a full-time thing for me. And I create resources for early childhood, music therapists and music educators.
I love that. I love hearing about other music teachers' stories and like the twists and turns it's taken. It's just so neat to hear that you found your niche with music therapy, but also starting as a preschool music teacher where it was so hard. And now you're like,
Yeah.
well, wait, I kind of like this and I'm good at it.
Yes.
And it's okay to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Songwriting is something I've always wished I could do. And maybe I could if I just put my mind to it. But I remember, oh my gosh. So in high school, when I took piano, and she's like, we're going to all compose sonatinas. And I'm like,
oh,
a 3-part sonatina. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like she just gave us the framework and like, this is how to do it. And so I remember hearing everybody else's, and they were so like really good. And it was such a struggle for me. So I guess songwriting is just something that you pick up well, or you're just not so good at it. But yeah, I don't know. What do you feel about that?
Well, that's interesting you say that, because I mentioned I studied composition, and honestly, I'm a terrible composer. But I am a songwriter. And I think that there's a distinction between the two, honestly. And I think some of it, and what I love about songwriting, is that I do have this improvisational piece of what I like to do. I like my songs to be able to adapt to any situation. So if in music therapy, we're working on non-musical goals, we're working on things like speech goals and physical goals and social goals and things like that. And so the songs really do need to be adaptable, because each kid has something different that they're working on. But so songwriting I love, because basically a lot of my songs I write in sections where like there's often kind of like the chorus or the A section is pretty concrete, very structured, like, it feels solid and it feels really good and it's catchy and things like that. And then often the B section is this kind of open-ended, I don't know what's going to happen next. So I have an idea of what I might do. I have an idea of some lyrics and things like that, but it's kind of open-ended. So I love that about songwriting, because I'm not tied into a specific melody. I just like the flexibility of it. But yeah, okay. To answer your question though, I don't know. There's a lot you can learn about songwriting. I think you'd be surprised. I am very passionate about songwriting. There's a lot that is very systematic about it. Certain chord progressions. And it's like, this is what you might do for the chorus. And then when you get to the B section, like here, if you have these specific chords in the chorus, here's what's always going to work, in like a B section or a bridge or something like that. And so the more, in college, I studied quite a bit on songwriting, and the more you learn about it, the more it's like, oh, I have all these tools in my toolbox, and then I can pull them out when I need them and when I get stuck.
Right.
And same, like, we do songwriting challenges on Music for Kiddos all the time to just kind of get people going and thinking about songwriting. And a lot of it is just sitting down and forcing yourself to write something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, I love that you gave that distinction between there's a difference between composing and songwriting. I guess I've never really in my brain differentiated the two of them, but that is so true. And it's funny because, you think of that song that went viral, Baby Shark.
Oh yeah.
It's
yeah.
so simple.
Yes.
It's so simple, but it just is the catchiest tunes that just take off the most, that stick in kids' heads. It's just, it's so funny. No, and I was thinking about, so speaking of writing, songwriting, I'm in the middle of writing a book, and it's something that's totally out of my comfort zone, totally out of anything I've ever done ever. And let's be honest, it was going to be done this summer and not going to happen because I don't have time anymore to even, anyway. But yeah, but it is something that's just stretched me. And so I guess what I'm getting at is with anything new, like songwriting, even a music teacher listening to this that wants to write songs to use with their kids in their classrooms, it is possible. It's just about learning. And for me personally, anything I've learned that's new, even with entrepreneurship, it is just about getting my foot in the door, getting going, and then I'll start learning as I go.
Exactly.
I mean, do you feel like that's a lot of how songwriting could be too? How you would compare that, I should say?
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes one little teeny tiny idea, like the fact that most choruses have 3 repeating lines. So most of them have 3 repeating lines. And usually the new line is like line 3 or line 4 or something like that. But it has 3 repeating lines, like let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. That all of a sudden you can write a chorus if you can come up with one catchy line. And often when I'm songwriting, I look for, like, it just kind of, I'm trying to find, lyrics are the hardest for me. Melody is fine. That's always been the easiest for me, but lyrics are challenging. And so when I am sitting down to write a song, I try and just come up with some kind of catchy line. Like my most recent song that I wrote is, what you gonna do, what you gonna do, what you gonna do when it's time to move? Just shake it, what you gonna do, what you gonna do, what you gonna do when it's time to move, just kind of this repetitive line. And usually from there, if I create some kind of catchy chorus or something, then the rest of it is relatively, I don't want to say easy, but there's pretty concrete things you do in a movement song, in the middle part, things like that.
Yeah. And it's so funny too that you said you're introverted, because I love telling people that I am too, because they're like, what?
Yeah.
Because, when you show up in the online sphere, is that the word I'm looking for here? But when you do, and you're showing up, and I feel like people just automatically think you're an extrovert, but I'm like, when I'm not showing up for a podcast interview or live or for my membership or whatever I'm showing up for, I'm usually just like chilling on the couch, watching TV, reading a book, playing at home with my kids. It's very like, we go out. I don't mean, well, not so much in COVID, but you know what I mean? Like it's very, I unwind the best by being by myself. And that's people, when they meet me, they just think because I come across as outgoing. And it's just funny because I think introverts get a bad rap sometimes.
Yeah.
Totally off topic, but
people are surprised. Oh, I was just going to say, people are surprised about me too. Cause like at conferences and music therapy conferences and things like that, I'll give a presentation and I'm just a mess. And they'll be like, the last video you posted had 3,000 views. Like, but you're speaking in front of 35 people at a conference and you are sweating bullets. It's just different. Online, different. I'm grateful because I get to do what I like to do, but for whatever reason, I'm more comfortable.
Yeah, totally. I feel the same way. So yeah, I can relate to that. Okay. So you have experience with working with little kids and with music. And I just kind of want to pick your brain around that. How do you enjoy teaching music? I know you've mentioned to me before you like using music for transitions and musical cues. So just touch on any of that with regards to teaching music to preschoolers or even kindergarten age students.
Sure. I love preschoolers. I love kindergartners. I love how different they are. And I I think people would be surprised in my groups at how quiet they are. And I say this not to be like, woohoo, I keep my kids quiet. No, 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 that's not what I mean. I mean, it's like intentionally made quiet, so that we can get a lot done in music time. And, so what I like to do is I like to transition through music group. For example, if I'm doing a 30-minute music group with 25 preschoolers, I'm really, really mindful about the arc of the whole entire group. So I'm focused, and this may be, the music therapist in me, I'm focused on the arousal level of the group as a whole, as an entire arc. So what I might do is, start out with a hello song, something like that, and then do kind of some cognitively challenging things at the beginning. I'll introduce kind of their new songs. I'll introduce things that are going to challenge them a little bit. And then often after that, I will do movement. I do quite a bit of movement. I like to utilize I'll say like 3 different kinds of movement songs, like really active movement songs, more kind of like middle movement songs, or even like a sitting movement song. I have a bunch of songs where we'll get kids up and moving around. And of course, the song itself is also focused on how do I not make this group go completely out of control with my music. So I'm controlling my music within the song, making it very, very structured, making the all of my cues inside of the song very, very clear. So how do I use that within the song? But then I might do a really active movement song and then move it to like a more kind of sitting movement song, a transitional movement song. And then I might do a movement song that's more based on stretching or breathing or something like that. So I'm really focused on bringing the energy up so they can get their wiggles out, then bringing it back down, and ending so that I can hand them off to the teachers, calm, calm and ready to listen. And they have had a sensory experience that is satisfying to them so that they're able to listen. Because a lot of 3s and 4s need that sensory input in order for their ears to be able to open up. So that's what I focus on a lot as a music therapist. Just like I said, being flexible in my music so that I can meet their needs as a whole, as a group, which is very challenging, but you can do it, especially as you get to know the group, and help them get their wiggles out, get that sensory stimulation in their ears, and in their bodies, and, of course, teach them something along the way. And then by the end of the group, bring that arousal level down.
Yeah. Yeah. Teaching preschool is definitely a different ballgame, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You'd think because they're so little and cute, they're just going to love everything you do. But it is, can I say controlled chaos if you don't really know what you're doing so much, which, let's be honest, a lot of us who have like training in music therapy or music education, you go in and teach kids preschool music to preschool kids. There we go. I couldn't get it out right. It is like a wake-up call. You're like, I had no training in this. Like, what am I doing? Oh my gosh.
Yes. And that's how I felt too, because I didn't have training in large groups. I had a lot of one-on-one training. We had smaller groups. A lot of music therapy groups are, 4, 5, 6 kids max. And so this early childhood education type of setting for me was a big eye opener. And you really pay attention to making sure that your music and the way that you present your music is going to not bring that, that chaos up, I should say. And it doesn't always work, of course. Like sometimes it just absolutely goes crazy, goes out of control. So now then you have to get it back, which there are techniques to do that too.
Yeah. So tell us about musical cues you use with the preschool age kids. What kind of cues do you use with them?
Yeah, well, music educators are masters at some of the musical cues that I use all the time. Like, just really emphasizing beat 4, and into beat 1, a really strong beat 1. And then cadences. Like, if I need kids to pay attention, I have been known to just start singing a note, and I'll just wait until they turn and they look at me and they're like, what is she doing? And I'm just singing this note. And then all of a sudden I'm, and I land on, I land on 1. So I'm going like 5-1 or something like that. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
some kind of very strong and clear cadence so that I get their eyes to look at me by doing something kind of odd, just singing a random note and then, out of nowhere. But then I'm landing somewhere very, very strong and sturdy so that their attention stays with me.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
So yeah, cadences, and I like to do what I call like leading with my voice. I do a lot with my voice where sometimes I'll do things like with that example of that note just kind of hanging out there in the open, like saying some lyrics in there too, like, oh, who's looking at me? Oh, and you can stay on that, kind of that strange cadence and then finally land on beat 1 with a more firm note. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Kind
it
of
does.
Okay.
No, it does. Mm-hmm. Well, no, and I can picture just a room full of preschool kids looking at you. What is she doing?
Exactly.
Singing, and
Yes.
a lot of times just the quietest, musical cues is what I'm trying to say, is a lot more infected. I can't talk today. A lot of the musical cues are a lot more effective than, clapping your hands or everybody look at me, I'm going to wait for you to be quiet, or talking over them. A lot of times that doesn't work because they're just going to keep going. So,
100%. And that the idea of reducing verbal cues and turning them into musical cues as much as possible is just something that I love to do. I try, I've done entire groups where if I'm sometimes struggling to keep their attention, where we just go from song to song to song to song, and I just insert something in there so that, I can kind of transition to the next song without giving any verbal instructions, and I just try and make my music so crystal clear. If you hear my songs, you'll notice that they're very structured, and they, they fit kind of the rhythms and the things like that. They're very clear. And then the way that I play my guitar, which is my primary instrument in working with preschoolers, is I'll use a lot of rhythm and starting and stopping and things like that. And even just like a little rumble on the guitar, it builds up anticipation and helps me gather the attention of kids. If I'm trying to get them to jump or something, you'll do a little rumble on the guitar on the 5 chord, and then land on 1. And mute it, so they're jumping and it really sounds like a jump and a stop,
Oh, yeah.
So using the guitar too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Which guitar is something I wish I had kept up.
Mm.
I learned it and then I lost it. And it just, if you don't keep it up, you end up losing it. And so that's something I definitely wish, and I can pick it back up, but it just, back to the songwriting thing, is something you just got to do.
Yes. Yep.
So when it comes to music for transitions with preschool kids, how do you, instead of saying something, okay, class, now we're going to go from movement to singing the song, or we're going to sing and we're going to add instruments, do you use music between transitions for preschool kids to help them stay focused?
I do. I have little song ditties that I'll use as I use a lot of music books. So as I'm like getting out a music book, and I just need 10 seconds, I'll just sing a little ditty while I'm kind of prepping in order to prepare them for the music book. We use a lot of music during transitions if they're changing classrooms, if they're going down the hallway, things like that. And then I talk a lot with families about using music for bedtime routines. And even like if you have a kiddo that has trouble getting in the car and getting to go, so everywhere you go, you are late, selecting some kind of song that they can associate with, now it's time to get in the car, and oh yeah, by the time the song ends, I should be in the car. Having some kind of association that is connected with music for like, oh, so that you as the parent don't have to say, it's time for us to go, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, which, I am guilty of all the time. It's let's go. And instead it can be like, all you do is you put on the song and the kids know they've got 3 minutes. They learn they've got a couple minutes to get in the car, and their challenge is to get in the car by the time the song ends. And it can turn from a positive, musical transition, again, reducing those verbal interactions.
I love that. And as a music therapist, you'll appreciate this. My oldest son has high functioning autism. And
Mm-hmm.
when I started, this was something, it was either a speech therapist or his resource teacher told me last year they had started doing with him, but just a few songs here or there, like you said, because he was really having a hard time with transitions and like wrapping up what they were doing so he could move on to whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
it's time to transition out of the classroom to go to lunch or whatever it was. And so when I became his quarantine teacher, I remember asking his teacher, I'm like, help me. And she
Yes.
said, Owen needs a lot of breaks. He needs a lot of brain breaks. But so we would play music, and then he knew once the song was over, it's time to get back to work, and immediately would sit down and just boom, he would just start up what he was supposed to be doing again. And I was like, what? And sometimes I know I've done this as a teacher and also a mom, totally unintentionally, but overcomplicating it, thinking I need to give him every verbal cue and all the instructions when he honestly just sometimes needs a break. He just mentally can't focus on one more thing. And so just,
Sure.
and it's not for every kid like that, but even if you're in the classroom, working with a classroom full of kids, like you said, the transitions between classes, or even in your classroom transitioning from activity to activity, a lot of times that, let's be honest, was where a lot of the issues start up with kids putting hands on each other, or not putting an instrument up correctly, or talking starts, or whatever else. So if you have music playing, it's probably giving them something to focus on too, where they're not, they're like focusing on, oh, they're going to move their feet to what they're hearing, or they start just, dancing to it without even thinking about it. I think that's just a great idea in general for a lot of different reasons, is to have music for transitions, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that example. It's so great that that works. And that structure, and usually, a song most of the time ends with a really, really clear kind of cadence. It's really clear that the song is ending. Most songs do. And that is such a good way to communicate to kids, that something has ended and that something else is starting. And it's just usually built into a song, but you can even add in any of the songs that you're doing. Like a lot of my movement songs end with sit down, and there's just an extra added cadence with the verbal instructions in there too. So I get two chances that it will work, right? The kids that need the music and the kids that need the verbal instructions.
Yeah.
Those musical transitions can be magic.
Well, and then also when a kiddo listens to that same song multiple times, they're going to know when the sit down part is coming, and you're not going to be teaching it anymore. They're just going to be expecting it. And do you notice kids are starting to sit down before he even says sit down at that point? Because they've heard it so many times. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, I've learned not to use that a few times in a row and then take it out, because they just sit down anyway. Like if I want them to stay standing, I have to, transition into, I have to let them sit, and we have to do something on the floor for a minute, and then they have to stand up again.
That's so funny.
Because it's so ingrained. Yeah.
Kids are such creatures of habit, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I love, you've told me before too, that you use visual cues to introduce the quarter and eighth notes. So what kind of visual cues do you use for kiddos? Or is it just kind of dependent on the teacher and what they want to use? Or how do you implement that with kids is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I have a particular song that has been really successful in kind of just introducing the idea of quarter notes and eighth notes and 16th notes. And it's something that I go back to repeatedly. I spend about 3 weeks on it during my school year. And it's just matching those to sounds of like different transportation things. So like the submarine is doo, 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 is the quarter notes. Helicopter is chick, 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 chick. Eighth notes, the train is 16th. Chick, 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 chick. And basically we just play around with, I've got some visuals that I show them, and then we do a lot of just recognizing them. I'll put them in groups, and we'll have the submarine group, and we'll have the helicopter group, and we'll have the airplane group and the train group. And, we have them play them on instruments, and then I play them on instruments, and the submarine group raises their hand if they hear them. And it's a lot of fun. I'm happy to share that song if you want to put it in those visuals in that song.
Yeah, definitely.
If you want to put it in the show notes, I can send that. But yeah, that's probably the song that you have seen maybe on Instagram or something that I share about pretty regularly, of just introducing the idea that more sounds look different.
Mm-hmm.
Chicka, chicka,
Yeah.
chicka, chicka, chicka. Looks different than doot, 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 doot.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's about where I get with preschool. And then with kindergarten, we get a little bit more complex in combining the helicopter with the submarine and playing them at the same time and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And kids, they have a variety of different learning styles. And so for your
Yes.
visual learners, it helps any learning style kiddo, but for your visual learners, seeing the notes visually with a picture up there of a submarine is definitely going to help them be like, oh, I get it now. It makes a lot more
Yes.
sense to me. And do you see that with some kiddos who maybe weren't understanding it, and then all of a sudden it just kind of clicks in their brain when they see it visually represented to them?
Yes, and over the years I've experimented a lot with my classes about when to introduce the visual aspect of it. It's interesting that you asked this because for some classes I have tried doing it 1 week without the visuals and then adding the visuals the next week or something like that. Kind of just doing the auditory stuff first and then trying the visual stuff. And I still do that. I give them an opportunity to understand it, like learn the song just without the visuals first. But it is really interesting when those visuals come out. It's an immediate shift and an immediate understanding. So those visuals they can be very, very important.
Yeah. So if there is an elementary music teacher listening to this and they have just been told that they're going to be teaching a preschool music class,
Yeah.
let's say it's their very first time in their first week of school with these little kids, what would be your suggestion, the first thing that they should do that first week?
Oh,
I mean, there's probably a
that's a
lot to
great
that.
question. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say as you're getting to know the group, don't be afraid to use some familiar songs that the kids already know. Because one of the biggest challenges is by the time you're 3 months in with your group, it's really different than the first month. The first month can be really challenging. But then I would also set some, just like you would with an elementary class, set some really clear kind of boundaries,
Yeah.
and it can be presented in a really kind way. But, in my classes, it's really important that kids stay where they're in their spots, and they stay on the line, especially during movement songs for safety for,
Right.
when it's one of you and 22 kids. So setting some really clear boundaries. And then I do a lot of movement in those first, especially the first month. I do tons of movement. I do kind of that pattern that I talked about before, where you have an active movement song, kind of a transitional sitting movement song, and then more of like a yoga song or a meditation song or a breathing song, because there's a lot of nervous energy in kids, especially in their first month, that it is just really good to give them adequate sensory stimulation.
There's a lot of times kids, that'll be their first experience with a music class ever.
Yes.
So you just kind of in your head think they're going to walk in and just maybe know what to do, but they don't.
Right.
Some of them do, but there's some kids that's their first time to ever step foot in a music class ever. And so just remembering that and to give these kids grace and give them instructions and what you want them to do, probably way more than you're used to even doing with elementary kids.
Yes.
Because they kind of have to have an instruction for everything. And you probably feel like you're being a little redundant, and there's no way they're going to need an instruction on how to walk in the room. Yeah, they're going to probably need to be told how to do it. And did you find that when you first started teaching preschool music, you're like, wait a second, I guess I got to give a lot more instructions than I thought I did, because
yes,
I just do.
Yeah. And, something like a visual schedule can be really, really helpful, just to give kids. There are certain kids who are going to really, really want to know what's coming next. And they might have, again, more of that kind of nervous, anxious energy. And just giving them a visual schedule can be really, really helpful. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And I forgot what I was going to say.
It's totally fine. No, but I do that all the time. One thing I love that you said too is that you have 3 different types of movements you do, and you end class with a quiet movement activity. But I used to end with like when I taught a pre-K class, let's end with freeze dance. And I remember I'm like, why can't I calm these kids down and bring them back to class? Well, they had just been jumping around my classroom. But in my head, I thought, well, we're going to end with a fun activity because they got through everything. And it was fun, but getting them back down to earth was like ridiculously impossible. But I love that you said when I started doing that too, ending with like a slower movement activity, it helped everyone involved. It helped us all just, woo. Or I would end sometimes even with a story, like a calm story, a music story, to move to what I'm reading you, but it was very slow and calm. And I remember making that shift and it completely changed the game. And so,
Can I tell you something that I discovered? You just reminded me of this. Something I discovered that it was a total game changer at the end of my groups was to end with sign language, because the kids would say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so I teach them over the course of a few months, I teach them the signs, thank you, and music. And so we'll say, we'll wave goodbye and we'll say thank you for the music, and we'll do it in sign language. So they know that when the very last song happens, it's all in sign language and completely silent after the last song ends. And that is so great, because usually that means the teacher walks up, at the end, and it's completely silent for them. And then the teacher ends up kind of whispering, thank you. But otherwise I was getting, bye, Miss Stephanie, bye. And that sign language piece really helped a lot.
That's a fantastic idea. And I know those classroom teachers are really appreciating the fact that you have their class calm and settled and ready to go before they leave your room.
Yeah.
Well, Stephanie, I've loved this conversation. And if you have anything else to add that we haven't talked about for our listeners today about even music therapy, because we didn't even talk about that very much, or teaching music to little kids, I would love for you to just share anything you haven't shared yet, if you have anything else to say.
Well, I have a lot of songs. I have a lot of free songs and resources all over social media, especially on Facebook. Like if you go back and look at the video archives, I just have years of videos of new songs. I try and share a new one like once a week, or a new music book. I write a lot of melodies to existing books. So I have a lot available for people who are looking for resources. And I just love to share them because I had such a hard time when I got started in preschool music. And so I like to share them, and I love hearing that kids are hearing my songs and things like that. So there's just a lot of free stuff that I can share. I also have like a whole resource library that's a membership site on my website, but there's so much free stuff too, that if you're just getting, interested in a few new songs, there will be plenty on there for free.
Yeah. So where can everybody find and connect with you online?
So my website is musicforkiddos.com, and then I'm on Facebook at Music for Kiddos and Instagram at Music for Kiddos. And if you like kind of a personal connection, Instagram's the way to go. And Facebook is a lot more of resource sharing, though I share all that stuff on Instagram too.
Yeah. And I will include all those links in the show notes. So make sure you connect with Stephanie. She's really, really fun to follow. And I have already gotten so many ideas from you just from following you and connecting with you on Instagram. I have loved having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, hey there. Thank you so much for listening into the Elementary Music Teacher podcast. There is an exclusive Facebook group just for listeners of this podcast and any elementary music teacher called the Elementary Music Teacher Community Facebook group. Come on over and join us there, where we have conversations around the podcast episodes and encourage each other each and every week. And also head to my website, thedomesticmusician.com. I have some free resources there that you can download to help you gain traction in your classroom today, as well as the blog and the membership site and all kinds of other goodies to help you keep going in your music teaching journey. I cannot wait to keep connecting with you and encouraging you and spurring you on in your journey of teaching elementary music. Hang in there, have an amazing week, and I will see you soon.